Before the female vibrator was invented, how did ladies deal with their needs? Gynecologists in London in 1880 were always busy. They would place the female patient's legs on the table. Then they poured some musk essential oil on their hands, making sure every finger was covered in the oil. The doctor would insert his right hand into the patient's skirt to perform the treatment. After a series of motions, the patient would release her tension, which also marked the end of the treatment. And this was the most effective treatment for hysteria. Men in high society were generally busy with social life and politics. Those noble women were forced to live respectable but empty lives. Lack of attention from their husbands over time made them anxious and irritable. The noble women also believed it was an illness, so they went to doctors to get treatment. The doctors didn't understand psychology, nor did they understand women's physical needs. But to solve the problem, they defined it as hysteria. Medicine in that era was so ignorant. Old doctors didn't even know what bacteria were. The bandages on patients' legs gave off a foul smell. Maggots even grew in the gaps of the bandages. Doctors refused to change bandages, claiming it was a waste of resources. But the eager to learn Teemo knew very well that this behavior would only worsen the condition, because Teemo always believed bacteria were the real cause of sepsis. As long as people washed their hands frequently and kept wounds clean, they could effectively suppress bacterial growth. These common-sense facts everyone knows today were considered nonsense by the mainstream medical field back then. Teemo was thus kicked out of the clinic by the old doctors. Helpless, he had no choice but to look for another job. Most clinics could not accept his new ideas. Teemo's interviews kept hitting walls. After going through several turns, he arrived at a gynecology clinic. While waiting for the interview, he noticed many ladies sitting in the hall, but they didn't look like they were sick. Teemo smiled and greeted them, but the awkward atmosphere left Teemo unsure what to do. Then he noticed a girl playing the piano in the room. As he watched her, completely captivated, Dr. Robert came out of the office. He was arguing with a woman. The woman's hysterical behavior shocked Teemo. The angry woman, seeing Teemo's strange gaze, scolded him. This was Teemo's first meeting with Charlotte. After Charlotte left, Robert took Teemo into the office. To pass the interview, Teemo did his best to sell himself. Fortunately, he was lucky. The clinic was in urgent need of an assistant. Seeing that Teemo knew a bit of medical knowledge, then Robert told Teemo, half of the women in London suffered from a condition called hysteria. His clinic specifically served these female patients. The treatment was physically demanding and somewhat tedious, and Teemo hadn't even heard of this disease. But upon hearing that Robert paid £4 a week and even provided room and board, he agreed without a second thought. Then Robert introduced his young daughter Emily to him. Seeing Emily so beautiful and virtuous, Teemo became even more excited about the new job, and the actual work opened him up to a new world. To show Teemo the treatment process, he explained the entire procedure in detail. Robert said most medical institutions in London used hot baths, cold baths, water douches, hypnosis, and similar methods. In severe cases, they even removed patients' uteri surgically. But Robert thought these methods were too extreme. They couldn't relieve women's anxiety at all. So Robert used manual massage as the treatment. Robert's exquisite technique was famous in the industry. The clinic had accumulated hundreds of regular clients, almost never receiving negative feedback. The only downside was that it was physically demanding. Sometimes accidental injury occurred. Though the process was somewhat rough, the treatment results were surprisingly good. Seeing patients who were gloomy just moments ago now glowing with vitality, Teemo was greatly shocked. He began to believe this was truly a job that could relieve patients' troubles. Teemo saw that the process wasn't particularly complicated. Soon he asked to start practicing himself. After a period of hard learning and repeated practice, Teemo's skills became increasingly proficient. He was also quite handsome, attracting more and more noble women to come by reputation. Robert was very pleased to see Teemo so capable. He even considered entrusting the clinic and his daughter Emily to him. Emily was a typical English lady, well-read in various moral texts, could play piano and sing, a genuinely talented woman. Although Emily had some fondness for Teemo, but it couldn't be said she liked him that much. She was just following her father's arrangement. But Robert also had a daughter, Charlotte. Charlotte also studied medicine, but she believed medicine should be used to save lives. Why should the rich have the privilege to see doctors, and why should the poor be denied medical care? So Charlotte opened a charitable medical center, and consistently provided help for the poor. Charlotte was cheerful and unrestrained, a passionate feminist and social activist. Though somewhat at odds with her sister, she didn't care at all, but Robert was very displeased. In the eyes of the old stubborn man, Charlotte was just a wayward spender, and a misfit. She came back for a meal, just to ask her father for money to buy coal. Upon hearing this, Robert immediately refused. Unexpectedly, Charlotte would rather break with her father than yield. Their argument ended with Charlotte slamming the door and leaving. At first, Teemo just saw it as an unusual family drama, without thinking too much. At this time, the clinic's workload kept him fully occupied, but overuse of his right hand caused some muscle spasms. Normal methods could no longer relieve the fatigue. Teemo couldn't even pick up a fish with his right hand. In the end, Emily helped, so Teemo could finally sit at the dining table. Then Robert said that he was getting old. His atrophied right hand could no longer handle the clinic's booming workload, so he decided to fully hand over the clinic to Teemo and betroth Emily to him. Although Teemo smiled on the outside, his heart was extremely troubled, because he knew his right hand couldn't hold out much longer. One night, after working overtime, Teemo was relaxing his muscles. Suddenly, Charlotte burst in with a lady. The lady had broken her lower leg. Charlotte's emergency center couldn't handle it. Helpless, she had no choice but to come here for help. Upon hearing this, Teemo immediately started treating her. Actually, Teemo always had a heart to save lives and help the sick. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lost his job just for changing a patient's bandage. Now his main job is treating hysteria. On one hand, Teemo does it to make a living. On the other hand, he feels it really helps relieve the patient's troubles. So Teemo doesn't feel like he's going against his original intentions. After putting a cast on the lady's leg, Teemo told her to come back for a follow-up on Saturday. But the next day he got scolded by Robert, because this place is a high-end establishment. Treating poor people would affect the clinic's image. If it happened again, Teemo would have to leave. Under Robert's threat, Teemo had to compromise. For this, he secretly went to Charlotte's relief center to remove the lady's cast. As a doctor, Teemo still fulfilled his responsibility. Charlotte was surprised that Teemo came for a home follow-up. To show her thanks, Charlotte insisted he have a cup of tea before leaving. After talking, they realized Robert wouldn't let poor people in. Teemo had no choice but to come remove the cast. At the same time, Charlotte was angry, but she also saw Teemo's kind heart, so she wanted Teemo to join her relief center. Charlotte usually teaches kids in a small classroom. She even set up sinks and soap in the classroom to help the kids keep their hands clean. Charlotte, surprisingly, in a subtle way, promoted this neglected knowledge of bacteriology. This move made Teemo look at her in a new light, but to run an institution at scale, it would take at least £2,000, which was a huge amount for both of them. And as long as Teemo doesn't make a mistake now, he could not only inherit Robert's clinic, but also marry a gentle and virtuous wife like Emily. Plus, Robert forbade him from helping Charlotte in any way, so he turned down Charlotte's invitation. This greatly disappointed Charlotte. In the end, they parted on bad terms. But even if Teemo wanted to compromise, his hand no longer obeyed him. Overuse of his hand had made it lose its former dexterity. This time, while treating a patient, his right hand suddenly cramped and couldn't be used. Helplessly, Teemo had to use his left hand, but the left hand was never as dexterous as the right. After a long time, the patient felt nothing at all. Then the patient stormed out. But in just one day, Robert received dozens of complaint letters. The clinic's reputation plummeted. At this rate, the clinic would go out of business. In a fit of anger, Robert kicked Teemo out of the clinic, and so Teemo left Emily, carrying his suitcase. He was clearly just one step away from his peak, but this damn hand cramp ruined everything. Teemo collapsed on the couch. Disheartened, he casually fiddled with an electric feather duster invented by his friend John. Unexpectedly, the moment the motor started, Teemo immediately discovered a new world. The vibration from the motor instantly gave his tired right hand a tingling sensation. Teemo suddenly realized, isn't this moderate and steady pressure? After enjoying it for a few seconds, Teemo asked his friend to increase the power. He wanted to experience the full power sensation.
That's it! That's the spot!
With first-hand experience, Teemo immediately had his friend make modifications. Maybe this thing could really replace his work. After several days of hard work together, they finally developed the world's first female vibrator. But Teemo knew Robert wouldn't try this invention rashly. So Teemo invited Robert's housemaid to test it. The first test was inevitably a bit tense, but Teemo assured that the maid could stop anytime if she felt discomfort. Unexpectedly, the effect was surprisingly good. This thing was hundreds of times stronger than the right hand. These short 5 minutes almost overwhelmed the maid. The next day, the two went to Robert's clinic. At first, Robert was still disdainful, but seeing the two of them so serious, he didn't want to miss the chance to make money either. For this, the three prepared to experiment on an old customer. This lady was a singer. She often complained that she couldn't sing well when she was in a bad mood. Although previous treatments had been effective multiple times, but none of them were enough to make her speak up again. But this time, the invention of the electric massage therapy quickly took London by storm. Soon, long lines formed outside the clinic. Teemo returned to his peak because of it. Robert praised Teemo's performance highly. He then officially promised Emily to Teemo. On the night of the engagement party, Charlotte made a rare grand appearance to give her sister her blessings, and this evening gown caught Teemo's eye. Turns out, the usually plain Charlotte had a sexy side too. The Earl and Countess, who raised Teemo, even mistakenly thought she was Teemo's fiancé. At this time, Charlotte's relief center had just one person at the door. Unexpectedly, two men appeared, and without saying a word, they beat the lady up. Everything was going smoothly at the exhibition hall, but it was suddenly interrupted by an injured woman. It turned out Charlotte, to keep the relief center running, even mortgaged her mother's belongings for a loan. Robert to sever his daughter's ties with the relief center. He secretly bought the IOU for the earrings from the creditor and used the debt as a reason to close the relief center smoothly. The lady tried to stop it but was beaten by the debt collectors. She then ran to Charlotte for help, and the police were about to take the lady away without a word. Teemo tried to intervene but was warned by the police. An angry Charlotte punched the police officer down, and so Charlotte was locked up in the jail. Soon she would be taken to court for assaulting an officer. Though Charlotte was a bit rebellious, she was still his daughter. Robert came up with a plan. He had Teemo testify in court, saying Charlotte had hysteria, so she could be sent to a sanatorium and avoid prison. Soon the trial day arrived. Charlotte had no fear at all. She, as usual, spoke loudly and firmly in her own defense. Her powerful words earned praise from many in the audience, and Teemo, preparing to testify, seemed to be thinking about something. The prosecutor believed all of Charlotte's crimes stemmed from hysteria. In this area, Teemo was a recognized expert. As long as he could confirm Charlotte's condition, the trial would end immediately. The tardy Teemo intended to follow the plan, but unexpectedly, the prosecutor claimed that people with hysteria, if it became severe, had to have their uterus removed. Clearly, Teemo couldn't control how severe the condition was. He could only prove Charlotte had the condition, so Teemo boldly told the truth. From a medical perspective, he thought hysteria was nonsense. It was just a natural physiological need of women. This woman before him, though emotionally changeable and unpredictable, and occasionally violent, was also the most selfless woman Teemo had ever seen. Finally, Teemo pleaded with the judge not to, because of an imaginary condition, let England lose an extraordinary selfless woman. Considering Teemo's public influence, the judge carefully considered his testimony, but as punishment for assaulting an officer, Charlotte was sentenced to 30 days in jail. This result was undoubtedly acceptable to everyone, but this trial greatly encouraged Emily. She felt she shouldn't be bound by rules, and wanted to arrange her own life independently. Realizing she didn't really love Teemo, she requested to break off the engagement. This was the first time Emily defied her father. She also gave up the phrenology studies her father arranged. During Charlotte's imprisonment, Teemo's friends had already made the vibrator portable. That day, John handed the vibrator patent fees to Teemo. The sudden wealth caught him off guard. The first thing he did after receiving the money was go pick up Charlotte from jail. He thoughtfully bought a warm coat and handed Charlotte £2,000. Teemo wanted to help her pursue her vision of establishing a community. Charlotte laughed, saying this money wasn't enough for her dream, but it was enough for Teemo to open his own clinic, where he could help people who truly needed it. Teemo said nothing. He took out a ring and knelt on one knee to propose to Charlotte.
Will you marry me?
Finally, they kissed tightly. In 1952, hysteria was officially abolished, and the portable vibrator, once on the market, swept across Europe. It wasn't just a tool, but a revolution of thought. This film is based on true events. It's both absurd and profound, revealing a secret long buried in history. If you want to see the sparks between medicine, desire, and the times, you might want to check out Hysteria 2011. For more great movies, follow me. See you next time.